Hello everyone, my name is Phawx. This video is going to be super information dense. We're going to be comparing a lot of different platforms to the Asus ROG Ally. This is going to be very much performance minded in this particular video, and especially very metric heavy. I will have a proper Asus ROG Ally review coming out later this week, but there's a lot of things that I want to touch base on because there's specific information, especially when we take a look at other reviewers' data. Not saying that they did anything wrong, but there's some things that you need to be mindful of that when we're looking at this data, that there's some things that we have to understand on how this is actually working. So there's a few different caveats that we have to talk about here. I am going to be comparing benchmarks against the Asus ROG Ally because just recently I also got in the GPU Max 2 refresh, which is AMD 7840U, which has 32 gigs of RAM, but it also has the fastest available RAM on that platform, this being slightly slower and matches what the 6800U platforms did previously. So we're going to be taking a look at all those different configurations and speeds of RAM and see how that all lines up and benchmarks against this. Now, I can't do 5 watt like I did on the previous ones because the Asus ROG Ally does not have a Ryzen adjust available to it just yet. So what that means is that it needs to be whitelisted, which means eventually we should be able to get the open source Ryzen Adjust software tool to adjust the TDP on this without using Asus's Armory Crate to adjust the TDP on this platform. Using Asus's Armory Crate, the lowest that you can actually set this device to is 7 watt. However, I tested that at 5 watts, so that wasn't available to me, so I chose 10 watt as the lowest TDP that I can use on this platform. Now, the thing that I have to note here is that when you choose the manual mode for go down to 10 watt, PL1 you can set to 10 watt, but PL2 and PL4, the minimum you can set is actually 15 watts. What this means, if we graph it out, is that it will stay at those higher TDP windows for around 2 minutes, and then for another 30 seconds, it will gradually go back down to your base TDP, which is 10 watt. So every bench that I did, I had to watch this machine before it would enter into a 10 watt TDP and then kick on the benches. And the only reason I say that is that it could be that people that are showing you 10 watt benches on this platform are not accounting for the PL time, the power limit windows where it's upclocking, up TDPing to 15 watt for a brief period of time. This will make the data set a little bit murky. So every one of my tests, I had to make sure that I was dead set at 10 watt before I did any of my tests. The other thing to note here is that the power scheme that is available on the Asus ROG Ally is a little not great when plugged in. It's actually better when it's running on battery. When it's running on battery, EPP defaults to 60, and the PCIe power link actually goes to maximum power savings. When you're plugged in, EPP goes to 0, and power savings goes to off, meaning basically when you plug this in, the situation that this is really considering is that you have this whole XG mobile eGPU set up to it. You are basically saying full power to CPU, EPP 0. You're saying your power budget, whatever you got, you should really be diverting to CPU first and whatever else second on this platform. And the PCIe power savings is off. So you're basically just saying go nuts. Both of those settings are actually worse on this platform if you're just running off of the APU itself. So what you're going to see is that there should be reviewers out there that say, I get worse performance when I plug in, and when I pull out on battery, I'm getting better performance. That has to do with the power scheme. So I had to readjust this and match it up to the EPP modes that I did on my other platforms. So those are all a baseline. So effectively, everything you're going to be seeing is Windows 11 22H2, latest updates on there, and latest available GPU drivers that I had available for the platform. So those are things that I just wanted to kind of address in terms of understanding how this device does power, because it is a little bit wonky by default, and you have to kind of configure it into a better way if you're just going to be running off the APU itself. Now, that's not to say that going to EPP 0 is going to 100% give you the worst performance at all times. It will just mess you up from time to time, only because when you're trying to manage power on the package itself, anytime that it can, the system Windows will say, oh, I should be giving more power to CPU first. And when we're playing games, typically speaking, we don't want that. So that's where you're going to see the getting worse performance when plugged in versus being on battery. The other thing to note is that the Armory software is still a little bit buggy. There's still some things that I like. Asus is answering a lot of questions on how to make Windows better as a PC gaming handle. So they added a lot of features that actually address that and kind of borrow from Android and Apple, where they have this little slider window that you can just pull from the bottom. And that works when you're in game as well. So it's really kind of slick. It's really nice. The one bit here is that Armory audio which seems to be for streamers to use, where it's trying to help you set up for mic and recording. When you set this device to 10 watt, it produces this crackling sound. You can actually listen to it right here. So as long as you disable Armory audio, all that crackling goes away. I also retested all my benches at 10 watt. There was no performance difference on all of them, thank goodness. So I was able to keep those, and just disabling Armory audio is probably advisable, especially when you're going to lower TDPs. The last bit that I want to talk about here is the idea of a PC gaming handheld, and you want your primary purpose to use Windows on that. In this particular regard, I would really advise that you look at the Asus ROG Ally as your first stop here. And the main reason for that is the screen itself. The SteamDeck, if you were to install Windows on it, it's a portrait-based display. So if you were to want to try to play older games on this, DirectX 8 or DirectDraw or older, what's going to happen is those games will fail. Now, you can actually fix this, and I've done videos on this before showing you how to do this, because most all handheld PC gaming handhelds that we had use portrait-based displays. But because the Asus ROG Ally has a landscape-based screen, all you have to do is just play the game, and it's just going to work. So that screen with VRR is sick on this panel. Everything looks super smooth. 120 hertz, I still have the same feelings I always had about those in all my previous videos. I don't think it's worthwhile, especially if you look at these benches. You're not going to really be hitting it all that much. Even on 2D games, you're going to be using 70 to 80% more power to go from 60 to 120 FPS in 2D-based games like Dead Cells. So you're going to be wasting a fair bit more amount of power just to hit 120 FPS, even in 2D games. So that's up to you if that's something that you really want. For me, the landscape part of it is huge. The VRR part of it is great, because you can basically just set 15 watt on the Asus ROG Ally and just have fluctuating, 40 to 70 FPS, depending on what it is. And everything just looks really smooth on the screen itself. So really cool to see there. The last bit that I want to talk about here, and this is actually really important, is with regard that in this very video, we're going to be comparing TDP versus TDP. However, that does not tell the whole story here. I'm going to show you a little time lapse of the SteamDeck and the Asus ROG Ally. This is Cyberpunk running, both the same exact settings, both are at 15 watt TDP, both are at max brightness. However, when we run both of these games and go through a burnout, both of these platforms both have 40 watt hour batteries, so the same capacity batteries. However, the SteamDeck dies around 14 minutes before the Asus ROG Ally does. So we're basically getting around 76 minutes, almost 80 minutes on the SteamDeck, and we're getting 90 minutes on the Asus ROG Ally at 15 watt TDP. So what this really is suggesting is, now this is just one game, but more to the point is that both of these platforms were at 15 watt, at load, doing the same exact thing with the same exact settings. And despite that, even having the same battery, the Asus ROG Ally went on for another 14 minutes. That's actually rather large, and that's a difference of being able to push more power into the Asus ROG Ally to get the actual average total system power to match up to the SteamDeck. So then you would have more of an apples to apples comparison. The only problem is trying to have something that is total system power as your benchmark is hard to define, just because all brightness and all the other things, the fan spinning up, Asus ROG Ally has 2 fans, all of these things kind of add up, and they make everything kind of murky. So there is a way, and I've done a video on this in the past looking at how TDP is divined. So there is that there. I still have to install Linux on here to kind of pull the sensors. Also on my other 7840U platform on the GPU Max 2, I have to take a look at that and see what's going on. All right, so that's that. I know that was a big spiel. We're going to get into the benchmarks part of this. Again, this is going to be super information dense. I'm going to have a more fully fleshed out review where I touch base on the analog sticks and the D-pad and go into how it actually feels and show gameplay and other stuff. But right now, we're just going to be taking a look at numbers and how they compare to other platforms to get a bird's eye view and kind of get an idea of how things look. Okay, a quick primer to help you guys kind of conceptualize and understand what's going on with these benchmarks and try to help you navigate your way through them. And I'll try to conceptualize all these things so you kind of have a better idea of what's going on. Up top, we have the game name that is getting benchmarked against, and then the settings that I'm using. So in this instance, it's Batman Arkham Knight, 800p max settings, and no NVIDIA GameWorks. On the left-hand side, one of the bigger things here is the TDP slice that we're going to be benchmarking against. In this instance, you're looking at the 10-watt TDP benches for this particular game and settings. Now, in the chapter links below, you will be able to see all of this separated, so you can quickly jump between all the TDP slices very easily and be able to see which game and which TDP is versus on any other particular platform, so that you can quickly navigate around in this particular video. Each platform is separated by its CPU and its GPU. Naturally, the SteamDeck is the Vango platform with Zen 2 CPUs. It is the 8CU RDNA 2 1.6 GHz GPU. Now, in this particular chart, we also have the newcomer here. This is the Asus ROG Ally using AMD's newest Ryzen Z1 Extreme chipset. These two platforms that you see here, they're both running 16 gigabytes of RAM. Now, the 16 gigabytes of RAM that's on the SteamDeck is running LPDDR5, a 5500 MT speed RAM, and then on the Asus ROG Ally, it is LPDDR5, 6400 MT speed RAM. On the AMD 7840U platform that you see right here, this is the GPU Max 2 refresh. It is running 32 gigabytes of RAM, but is running LPDDR5X 7500 MT speed. So it is using the fastest memory speed of the bunch. And then below this is the GPU Max 2 proper, the first one, GPU Max 2 Prime. This is running AMD's 6800U platform. Naturally, it's the Zen 3 Plus CPU and the 680M GPU. Both the Z1E and the 7840U share the same GPU, 780M. However, we have more RAM on this platform and faster RAM as opposed to what's on the Asus ROG Ally. The last thing to note is that all of these platforms are running the latest version of Windows 11 22H2 and the latest GPU drivers that are available on all these platforms from their specific vendors. All right, let's get into the actual benchmarks here. The first one up, we're looking at 10-watt TDP slice for Batman Arkham Knight 800p max settings, no NVIDIA GameWorks. If we look at the 10-watt TDP slice for our baseline on the Z1 Extreme as 100% mark, the SteamDeck is roughly 71% faster on averages. The 7840U GPU Max 2.5 refresh is 66% faster, and the 6800U is looking like it's 40% faster than the Z1E. If we go ahead and take a look at the next set of benches, all right, here we are taking a look at the 15-watt TDP slices, and we can see a big reversal here. The SteamDeck went from number 1 at 10-watt all the way down to number 4 at 15-watt. We find the Z1E going a little bit faster than us. If we take a look at the averages for the SteamDeck at 100% baseline, the 7840U is around 33% faster averages, 6800U is around 14% faster, and the Z1E Extreme about 10% faster on averages. The reason why we're seeing this is that 15-watt TDP is really where we're going to start seeing diminishing returns on the SteamDeck platform. It really excels in the 8 to 11-watt TDP area, and which beats these particular platforms in specifically. So for the most part, you will see 15-watt TDP on the SteamDeck lagging behind a noticeable bit. All right, we're taking a look at the 20-watt TDP slices. Now, the SteamDeck does not go to 20-watt. You can force it to go, but officially it maxes out at 15-watt TDP. I will keep this here just so that we can keep it as a baseline and use it as a baseline when we start talking about all these other ones. If we were to compare the 15-watt TDP SteamDeck to 20-watt on the other platforms, we're looking like the 7840U is 48% better. The Z1E overtakes the 6800U in this particular bench, and we're looking at 27% better than the SteamDeck at 15-watt, and the 6800U is basically 21% better on averages than the SteamDeck at 15-watt. If we were to go to the 6800U, the Z1E is around 5% faster, and the 7840U with its faster RAM is about 22% better. Next up, we're going to take a look at the 25-watt TDP slices. Again, keeping the SteamDeck at 15-watt TDP. If we use that as our average, the 7840U is around 54% better over 15-watt SteamDeck. The Z1E is around 38% better over 15-watt SteamDeck. And the 6800U is around 28% better than 15-watt SteamDeck at 25-watt. If we use the 6800U as the average baseline, we're looking at 8% better on the Z1 Extreme over the 6800U and around 21% better over the 6800U on the 7840U. All right, the next game we're going to take a look at is Cyberpunk 2077. Again, this is 800p. The SteamDeck preset, no upscaling is used here, and the FOV I changed to 100. Once again, the SteamDeck finds itself on the top. However, the Z1 Extreme goes above the 6800U in this particular test. If we look at the 6800U as our baseline, the Z1E is around 3% better, but the 7840U pulling ahead considerably over the 6800U at 34% better, but the SteamDeck takes the cake, as usual, in the 10-watt TDP slice at around 48% better than these platforms. Moving on up to 15 watt, once again, we find the SteamDeck going down all the way to the baseline. If we take a look at 15 watt TDP on the SteamDeck as our baseline, the 7840U finds itself to around 34% better, the Z1E around 31% better, and the 6800U being around 5% better. This is one area where the Z1 Extreme finds itself picking up its pace a little bit. All right, in this particular segment, we're looking at 20 watt TDP slice, once again against the 15 watt SteamDeck as the baseline here. The Z1E finds itself being 73% better than the SteamDeck on averages. On the 7840U at 20 watt, we're looking at 63% better, and against the 6800U, the 6800U being 29% better than SteamDeck at 15 watt against these other platforms at 20 watt. All right, taking a look at the 25 watt TDP slice here, we're taking a look at SteamDeck as the baseline average, SteamDeck 15 watt being the baseline average. Compared to the 25 watt Z1 Extreme, we're looking at 96% faster for the Z1 Extreme, the 7840U being 74% faster, and the 6800U being 41% faster than the 15 watt SteamDeck on averages. All right, the next game we're going to be taking a look at is Deus Ex Mankind Divided, 800p ultra settings, and using the DirectX 11 backend. Up on the top, once again, we see SteamDeck winning in the 10 watt zone, 7840U trailing behind 6800U, and then the Z1 Extreme doing a worst out of the bunch. If we use the Z1E as the baseline, the SteamDeck is 93% better than the Z1E at 10 watt. The 7040U is pulling ahead by 61%, and the 6800U is pulling ahead by around 36%. All right, next up, we're going to be taking a look at the 15 watt TDP slice here. Once again, using the SteamDeck 15 watt as our baseline for averages. The 7840U is around 26% faster, the 6800U is around 7% faster, and the Z1E about 2% better than the SteamDeck at 15 watt. All right, our next TDP slice here is 20 watt, but we're going to keep the SteamDeck at 15 watt using that as our baseline. The 7840U is looking like it's 35% faster than 15 watt SteamDeck at 20 watt. The Z1 Extreme is around 29% better than the 15 watt averages on the SteamDeck, and the 6800U is around 28% better. All right, our next bench here at the 25 watt TDP slice here, once again keeping the SteamDeck 15 watt as our baseline average. The Z1E is finding itself to be 43% faster, the 7840U 41% faster, and the 6800U around 39% faster. Generally speaking, all of these are roughly performing generally the same within margins of error. So these kind of look like they're almost identical across all of those platforms against the SteamDeck. All right, the next game we're looking at here is God of War, 800p, no upscaling, and the lowest preset. Once again, we find that the SteamDeck at 10 watt is reigning supreme here. If we take a look at the Z1 Extreme, it is trailing behind on everything. If we use the Z1E as our baseline, the SteamDeck is finding itself to be 87% faster than the Z1E at the same 10 watt. The 7840U is around 67% faster, and then the 6800U is basically the same between these two platforms. All right, looking at our 15 watt TDP slices, the only thing I changed here, obviously the averages on the 6800U are lower, but I swapped these places only because our 1 percentile and 0.2 percentile are clearly better than the SteamDeck, and I find this to be a better overall picture than what the SteamDeck is doing at 15 watts, so I swapped these around. Once again, using the SteamDeck as our baseline here, we see that the 7040U is around 38% better. On averages, the Z1E is around 15% better over the SteamDeck at 15 watt, and the 6800U is a little bit less on averages, but still, again, we're doing better on 1 percentile and 2 percentile. All right, the next segment that we're going to be looking at are the 20 watt TDP slices. Once again, we're going to be comparing them against the SteamDeck at 15 watt, using that as the baseline. When 15 watt SteamDeck at the baseline, we're looking like the 20 watt 7040U is around 56% better. The Z1E at 20 watt is around 44% better, and then the 6800U being 30% better. Okay, looking at the 25 watt TDP slice for God of War, again using the 15 watt TDP for SteamDeck as our baseline, the 7840U at 25 watt is around 63% better, the Z1E around 59% better, and the 6800U at 43% better. All right, for our next test here, we're going to be taking a look at Horizon Zero Dawn. This is 800p and using the Favor Performance preset. Once again, at 10 watt, the SteamDeck is the king here. And if we use the Z1 Extreme, finding itself in the bottom of the bunch as our baseline, the SteamDeck is 118% better than the Z1E at 10 watt. 7840U is around 85% better than the Z1E at 10 watt, and the 6800U is around 47% better than the Z1E. All right, looking at our 15 watt TDP slice for Horizon Zero Dawn, again, even though the Z1E has slightly less averages than the SteamDeck, because the 1 percentile and 0.2 percentile are clearly better on the Z1E, I listed that as third place. If we look at the SteamDeck as our baseline, the 7840U is looking like it's 27% better on averages, 110% better for the 6800U, and the Z1E just has better 1 percentile and 0.2 percentile overall, with the 1 percentile being 11% better on the Z1 Extreme. All right, looking at our 20 watt TDP slice here, and again, leaving the SteamDeck at our 15 watt baseline, the averages on 7840U are around 56% better. On the 6800U, we're looking at 35% better, and the Z1E is around 25% better. All of these platforms being at 20 watt versus SteamDeck at 15 watt. Capping off our look at Horizon Zero Dawn with the 25 watt TDP slices here against the 15 watt SteamDeck as our baseline. 7840U is around 64% better, the Z1E being around 44% better, and the 6800U being around 45% better. All right, the next game we're going to be taking a look at is Metro Exodus. This is 800p, the lowest preset possible in there. Once again, we see that the SteamDeck at 10 watt is leading the bunch. If we take a look, the Z1E is trailing behind once again. If we use the Z1E as our baseline, the SteamDeck at 10 watt is 82% better, the 7840U is 74% better, and the 6800U is around 25% better than the Z1E at 10 watt. Going into our 15 watt TDP slices here for all of these platforms, once again, the SteamDeck rockets to the bottom. Just because of diminishing returns, we're going to take a look at the SteamDeck as our baseline. The 7840U is around 49% better than the SteamDeck at 15 watt. The 6800U is looking like it's 21% better, and the Z1E is looking like it's 11% better in the 15 watt zone. Taking a look at the 20 watt TDP slice for Metro Exodus, once again, leaving the SteamDeck at 15 watt as our baseline. We look at the 7840U being around 79% better than the SteamDeck at 15 watt. Again, that's running at 20 watt. For the Z1E, we're at 49% better than the SteamDeck at 15 watt, and the 6800U at 20 watt being around 41% better than the SteamDeck at 15 watts. All right, taking a look at our 25 watt TDP slice here, once again using the 15 watt SteamDeck as our baseline, the 7840U getting around 93% better averages at 25 watt, the Z1E at 69%, and the 6800U at 49%. There is a little bit of weird consistency happening here on the 1 percentile and 0.2 percentile on the Z1 Extreme, just pointing that out. All right, for our next game, we're going to be taking a look at Red Dead Redemption 2. I'm using the Vulkan backend here and the lowest settings possible. Once again, we see the SteamDeck at 10 watt against everything else at 10 watt reigns supreme. The Z1E finds itself at the bottom of the bunch once again. If we use the Z1 Extreme as our baseline, the SteamDeck is roughly 2 times better than the Z1 Extreme at 10 watt. The 7840U is around 74% better than the Z1E at 10 watt, and the 6800U is around 46% better. All right, next up, we're taking a look at the 15 watt TDP slice, and I moved the Z1E onto the third place, even though it isn't really. I kept the SteamDeck on the bottom just so it's consistent, because SteamDeck has been on the bottom forever now. So I'm going to keep that the same. If I use SteamDeck at 15 watt as our baseline, 7040U is around 36% better on averages, 6800U is around 11% better on averages. We find the Z1E falling behind around 10% on averages. Only the 1 percentile we see as a little bit better on Z1E, being around 3% better. But this is pretty much the worst of the bunch on Z1E for 15 watt. It's a surprise for the SteamDeck to be overtaking it here. Next up, we're looking at our 20 watt TDP slices for Red Dead Redemption 2, again leaving the SteamDeck as our baseline at 15 watt. 7840U finds itself 16% faster on averages, the 6800U finding itself 30% faster, and the Z1E finding it around 9% faster on averages. All right, next up we find our 25 watt TDP slices here, and again using 15 watt SteamDeck as our baseline. We look at 7840U being around 70% faster on averages over SteamDeck at 15 watt. The 6800U being around 33% better, and the Z1E being around 33% better. Really, on averages, the 6800U and the Z1E are neck and neck, but we find the 1 percentile and 0.2 percentile falling behind the 6800U. All right, the next game we're going to be taking a look at is Returnal. We're using 720p and the lowest preset possible. At 10 watt, we see the SteamDeck pulling ahead as usual, and the Z1 Extreme falling behind here. If we take a look at the Z1E being the baseline for us, the SteamDeck finds itself around 90% faster versus 10 watt averages on the Z1 Extreme. The 7840U is around 87% faster than the Z1E at 10 watt, and the 6800U is like 44% faster. All right, taking a look at our 15 watt TDP slice against all of these platforms, once again using the SteamDeck as our baseline. The 7840U finds itself 46% faster, the 6800U is around 8% faster, and the Z1 Extreme around 6% faster. All right, looking at our 20 watt TDP slice using the SteamDeck as our baseline, averages on the 7040U around 61% faster, Z1E around 38% faster, and the 6800U around 30% faster. And looking at our 25 watt TDP slices here using 15 watt SteamDeck as our baseline, 7840U is around 68% faster, the Z1E around 48% faster, and the 6800U around 42% faster on averages compared to the 15 watt SteamDeck. And the last game to cap us off here is Shadow of the Tomb Raider, 800p lowest settings and using DX12 as the backend. Once again, we see the SteamDeck at the top for our 10 watt TDP ranges here. The Z1 Extreme finds itself at the bottom once again. If we use the Z1E as our baseline, the SteamDeck is around 84% better than the Z1E at 10 watt. 7840U is around 55% better than Z1E at 10 watt, and 6800U is around 47% better than the Z1E at 10 watt. Moving right along into our 15 watt TDP slices here. Once again, I had to move the Z1E from the last place to the third place. And the only reason is just because there's a tiny little change in averages. We can clearly see that 1 percentile and 0.2 percentile are winning on the Z1E. So this is clearly third place, but it's just getting moved over because of that averages. If we use the 15 watt SteamDeck as our baseline, we can see that the 7840U is around 29% better on averages, 6800U being 27% better, and the Z1E pretty much being 100%, but it's a 1 percentile being 13% better than the SteamDeck. Moving along to our 20 watt TDP slice, again leaving the SteamDeck at 15 watt as our baseline, we see that the 7840U is around 58% better on averages, 6800U being around 43% better on averages, and the Z1 Extreme being around 28% better on averages. And the last portion of this benchmark, the 25 watt TDP slices for Shadow of the Tomb Raider, once again leaving the SteamDeck at 15 watt as our baseline. On averages, the 7840U is looking like it's 66% better on averages, the 6800U is around 53% better, and the Z1 Extreme is around 38% better on averages. So that's it for the benchmarks. It's really weird. We heard from AMD PR that the Z1E has optimized voltage, and under no real circumstances do I say that I can really see it. Maybe in Cyberpunk, we had that one benchmark at 25 watt where it really pulled ahead against the 74U, but typically voltage optimizations aren't going to be happening at the high end. They would happen on the low end, so we really should have seen something really happening better on the low end. I mean, it could happen on the top end too, but we didn't see that all over the place. So I almost feel like there's just something odd about the ROG Ally right now in terms of this review period, and that we need to take another look later on. Maybe give it another like a month or two, and once official AMD drivers come out for the Z1, we can then start comparing again and see if things get cleaned up a little bit. A little bit to unpack at the moment, but that's the data that we have available right now. I'm going to most likely review. I am most likely going to have to re-review this later on once driver updates and Armory updates and a firmware update comes for the platform itself. So I will be taking another look at this in a few months' time, although I do have to return this in about 2 months. So just before I have to return it, I'll probably test it again, and that'll be that, and we'll see where it looks. That's how we look at the Asus ROG Ally from a performance standpoint right now, and knowing how its power characteristics are. As always, guys, thank you for your time, and thanks for watching.